Welcome to the Göppinger Novelties for 2025. We will now present a selection of them to you. These are locomotives and cars that will inspire you, so be curious. Please note, however, that all the models shown here are hand samples. The Class 1 is celebrating a birthday. Yes, the Class 01 Express steam locomotive, one of the legendary Express steam locomotives, is celebrating its 100th birthday in 2025. That calls for a new model, doesn't it? Of course, we want to celebrate the anniversary with the version as it was in the 1930s, still with the large Wagner smoke deflectors, and there should be a nice car set to go with it. With a newly designed postal baggage car that will certainly give this train a very special look. It has the prototypical roof equipment and adorns a set of 3, which also includes 2 cars from application group 29. The 01-184 is a finely detailed metal model with many sound and light functions, such as the digitally switchable flickering firebox. Typical of the operating condition is the central locking of the smoke box. Let's stick with anniversaries for a moment. There is a route that is even older than the 01, namely the Geislinger Steige. Yes, right on our doorstep, of course. The Geislinger Steige, of course. In 2025, we will celebrate the 175th anniversary of the opening of this steep route up to the Swabian Alp. We also want to celebrate this anniversary in style, with 2 beautiful products. On the one hand, a classic locomotive built for the Geislinger Steige, the Class E93 or 193 electric locomotive. We have a beautiful Era 4 version of this in our new items program this year. It comes with a beautiful contemporary car set, just as it was used on the Geislinger Steige in the 1980s. The E93 had been built just for this line because it was needed there as a pulling and pushing locomotive. It was then replaced by the Class 194. In addition to the many digital functions, the switchable startup light is particularly worthy of mention here. The metal model is also being added to the Trix product line. A fitting engine for Geislinger Steige's anniversary. And we also built a great steam locomotive, the classic steam locomotive for the Geislinger Steige, the Württemberger K or Series 59. 44 units of the 6-coupled engine were put into service. They had to work hard to pull heavy trains. They were built in Esslingen from 1917. The massive, finely detailed model has a buffer memory that effortlessly handles short, powerless sections. And thanks to the cambered chassis with laterally displaceable axles, tight radii are no problem. The jumbos of the 44 series are a legitimate successor to the 59 series. A new version in an Era 4 design has been added to the Märklin Classics. It comes with the cars from the 150th anniversary of the Geislinger Steige anniversary set. Let's move on to the passenger trains and the model version of a popular locomotive that was initially used in the GDR. The Ludmilla, a striking 6-axle large powerful diesel locomotive. It also needs something to pull. And what the Silberling was for West Germans is the Halberstadt Center entry car for East Germans. It was the classic local transport car in the GDR. And we will finally release it. It was missing from our range. The model will be highly detailed. We have a multicolored interior, and naturally, it comes into its own when we also have interior lighting, of course with buffer memory, flicker-free. So it gives a very nice picture. A three-part set and a single car are being released by Märklin and Trix. 3 dB center entry cars are coming to the assortment to go with the 211. They have interior lighting that can be turned on digitally in the cab control car. This is a classic combination from Era 4 that will be an eye-catcher on Märklin and Trix layouts. A familiar diesel locomotive sound emerges from the roundhouse. A cute V60 at the start of its service. It seems to be in a hurry to get to its train. It is now on its way with 3 covered freight cars on a branch line. A stopover is planned in a station, which allows us to take a peek at some of the many very finely executed details on the model. The V60, known to some as the three-legged engine. It sounds a bit disrespectful, but somehow it fits, doesn't it? Yes, the young German Federal Railroad had a shortage of switch engines. That's why an order was placed for a 3-axle diesel hydraulic switch engine. Almost all of the well-known locomotive builders had a hand in its production. It was nicknamed three-legged because it is a 3-axle locomotive with a coupling rod.
The
locomotive is now in the Märklin range, but it was already available when I was a child. Why did you decide to take on it and give it a complete facelift?
The
V60 had been in the Märklin assortment for decades. It was time to redesign the locomotive. Our new design of the V60 will no longer have a screw on the roof. But it does have a furnished driver's cab, which will also have interior lighting. The delicate railings and freestanding lamps are pleasing to the eye. A telex coupler is installed at both ends of the locomotive, turning the metal model into a shunting master. Thanks to the built-in buffer capacitor, short current-free sections do not interfere with the locomotive's work. Now the three-legged has a long line of newly designed cars at the coupler.
The
2-axle tank car is based on the open freight car chassis of the OMK design. There were regulations that the tank cars had to be equipped with a hand spindle brake and a brakeman's cap in the beginning. 12 differently painted and labeled tank cars are available from Märklin in a display. Six additional cars are being released by Trix. Of course, the models can also be purchased individually. This allows them to be used as a unit train or in mixed trains as desired. Beautiful vehicles for the early Era 3. This model is certain to fit into the first day of school goodie bag.
Den Spitznamen Schweineschnäuzchen hat der kleine Schienenbus bekommen.
The little rail bus was given the nickname Pig Snout because of the shape of its engine, which also looks beautiful. That's where the nickname Pig Snout comes from. Regarding the technical features of the rail bus, it has interior lighting that is installed as standard, and it will have sound. We have not included a coupler. It was unusual to attach something to it. Therefore, it will not have a coupler. I think the vehicle is really good in terms of detail.
Fahrzeug ist, denke ich mal, richtig gut, was die Detaillierung angeht.
A cute vehicle, and even with buffer memory on board. The 01-504 looks unusual.
Ja, die Lokomotive hat natürlich auch noch ein...
Yes, the locomotive has a special feature. That's the chimney, which is not round like on other steam locomotives, but elongated and flat, the so-called Giesel ejector. A decorative, exotic model from Märklin and Trix. Beautiful vehicles of the Swiss Confederation have joined the range.
Der Swiss Express war ein ganz markanter und
The Swiss Express was a striking and above all well-known train that came onto the rails in Switzerland in the mid-1970s. It ran from Zurich to Geneva and back. There were great engines and great cars that were specially designed and built for this train. We are celebrating the train's 50th anniversary by not only dedicating one new construction to it, but several.
Ja, widmen wir diesem Zug nicht nur eine, sondern mehrere Neukonstruktionen. Das beginnt mit der Lok.
It starts with the locomotive and continues with the passenger cars. And as a little treat, we also have the former freight train cab car, the so-called Sputnik, which was scrapped after its time in the freight trains. A certain number were used as coupling cars for the Swiss Express. We will offer the locomotive, cars and coupling cars to our customers as a completely new construction.
Werden wir als komplette Neukonstruktion unseren Kunden anbieten.
The RE442 reveals significant design differences compared to its sister machines.
Der markanteste Unterschied ist, dass die Lokomotiven der
The most striking difference is that the locomotives of the first series had only one pantograph installed. Later there were always two, and the locomotives for the Swiss Express were given an extended buffer beam, because the cars were equipped with an automatic coupler. The locomotive looks even more powerful and striking due to this longer buffer beam at the front.
Stoßbalken, den die Lok vorne hat.
The color scheme is beautiful. The Swiss call it Cremeschnittli. It really whets our appetite.
Ja, auf jeden Fall. Der Zug macht
Absolutely, the train is fun. In the original it was 14 cars long, or 15 if you count the locomotive. The order of the cars was always the same. So on the way to Zurich, you had the first-class car with the baggage compartment directly behind the locomotive. Then came the first-class cars, the dining car, and then a whole range of second-class cars. In our case, the last second-class car is equipped with built-in rear lighting. And, of course, the entire train also has interior lighting and buffer storage. In the dining car, we lit the table lamps. That's a very nice detail. And because we used a multi-part and therefore multicolored interior, the whole train looks good, especially the dining car, which has many different colors, and that's a big highlight.
Farben und das ist wirklich ein ganz großes Highlight.
What scale are we talking about here? This is the full-length scale, because these cars were relatively short in the prototype. We are here in the full-length scale of 1:87. Both trucks are powered. A buffer capacitor can also be seen here.
Die zukünftigen Neuheiten werden dann
The future novelties will tend to be equipped with a buffer capacitor. Very gratifying. Every model railroader will appreciate that.
ja.
Yes.
Und da kommt gleich eine Lok, die
One train is being released that I have always found beautiful because of its design. I'll just say BLS. I'll leave the rest to you.
Ja, natürlich für die BLS. Da waren wir ja bisher.
Of course, we were a bit limited for BLS in the past. What we had done for BLS so far, so to speak, variants of the SBB engines that existed. Now we are involved with a real new construction, especially for BLS. It is the heavy freight locomotive AE68. I am particularly looking forward to this because it is so typical and looks so great. We chose a locomotive from the second series, which means it had the round driver's cabs from the start.
Wir haben eine Lokomotive gewählt aus der zweiten Bauserie. Das heißt,
And we chose a very early version from the late 1940s to the early 1950s, especially with two pantographs on the roof. This is actually something that is rarely found in model railways.
das ist eigentlich eher, was man modellbahnmäßig selten findet.
The AE68 in its classic version should be very well received, not only by fans of Swiss railways. A definite highlight in the Märklin and Tricks program. This is the 186 series. All four axles are powered via cardan shafts. This ensures decent tractive forces.
Baureihe 186, ja, man kann sie auch die Europa-Lok nennen.
Class 186, you could also call it the Europe locomotive. It comes from the Trax type family from former Bombardier, now Alstom. We have already had 4 different versions of this locomotive in our range over the last few years and decades. But it was time to produce the locomotive in high detail with a metal body, as a completely new design. In addition to the DB model, other variants, such as the beautifully printed engine of the private HSL, will be added to the Märklin & Tricks program.
The
sound has of course been completely redesigned. The roof area is also very attractive, as we have completely redesigned roof-mounted pantographs with the correct contact strips for the respective countries. The prototype 186-181 can be found in Germany, Austria, Belgium and the Netherlands with long and heavy trains. Thanks to the built-in buffer capacitor, this attractive HVO model will soon be a delight on many layouts. We are sticking with strong machines for freight traffic. Soon it will be 6-axle. With the new design of Class 151, it was clear that variants would follow. Now we are making a late DB Era 6 variant, so we're playing in the late 2000s. From around 2008, when the locomotive was still in service with DB cargo. It later went to Railpool. However, the locomotive is not simply the locomotive from back then in a different color, because in order to implement the Era 6 variant in a prototypical manner, shape changes were also necessary here. The changes in shape mainly relate to the roof area. As you can see, we now have the single-arm pantographs. These have also been completely redesigned and can be raised and lowered digitally. Does the starting lamp still exist or has it been dropped? The starting lamp has also been left in. That's a nice gimmick. It was there until the end, and that's why this locomotive also has the starting lamp. I guess you need a long freight train for such a long, powerful locomotive. What do you have on offer? We haven't let ourselves get carried away in this respect either. We can announce a new design. The Class 151 was often used in coal traffic in front of long block trains. And that's why we will release the Pulse 182, a modern coal wagon from Deutsche Bahn AG, the further development of our 4624, so to speak. Also a further development in the prototype. It is now longer and can load more. We have a 12-car display at Märklin and 6 more road numbers in the Tricks range. So you can hang a nice 18-car train behind the 151. That certainly looks great. 18 wagons are a considerable load. The impressive new 6-axle dual-power locomotives of the Euro Dual and Euro 9000 types are more and more running ahead of heavy freight trains on German tracks. This should actually be your focus. We already have a lot of customer feedback and requests that this would be a great Märklin model. Let's wait and see. We changed the subject and come to regional traffic. There is a lively rail car on the move, which is a delight in many respects. You could say it was the modern version of the savior of the branch lines. What used to be the VT-89 was later the Regio Shuttle RS-1, operated by most railroads as the 650 series. A vehicle that is now indispensable. It is used by many private railroads, but also by Deutsche Bahn AG. In the prototype, they run as soloists or in tandem, which can also be recreated in the model. In addition to the red DB version, other versions are available from Märklin & Tricks. A rock-solid digital model that is ideal for getting started in our wonderful hobby. In the meantime, the last prototype 218s enjoy unrestricted cult status among railway enthusiasts. It's not much different among model railroaders. You can't do without 218. I would say that quite clearly. The locomotive is part of it. Together with the MHI, the Märklin Dealer Initiative, we are continuing the series of Orient Red locomotives that have aged a little. We have added the 218-4, which has the large fan under the grille in the roof area. It also has the snow and rail scrapers at the front, which gives the locomotive a striking and beefy appearance. And the whole thing is in an operating condition condition in which it could do with a wash. But you can see what a workhorse it is. A beautiful locomotive. We continue with these locomotives, awaiting the Class 249. We have technically upgraded the dual-mode Vectron. It has a pantograph that can be raised and lowered and a telex coupling at the front and rear. This increases the play value of the locomotive and makes it much easier to simulate operation on your layout. That will please many customers, won't it? Yes, the question was there right from the start. When will the dual-mode Vectron come with a pantograph that can be raised and lowered? That was the most frequently asked question. Now it is also getting a telex coupling and… What more could you ask for? What more could you ask for? This member of the Vectron family is a real shunting master that can take on a wide range of work on Märklin and Trix layouts. Matching cars can also be found in the range. Have fun with the dual-mode Vectron. Yes, Minitrix is starting the new model year in a very colorful way. The 291-034, better known as Amazing Amelie, delights with its eye-catching color scheme. The prototype of the digital model belongs to Rail Systems RP, an eye-catcher on any layout. Despite the diversity of the range, the product manager also has a favorite model. Yes, this is the little three-coupler, the Class 89.8, the former Bavarian R33, because we have achieved something that, as far as we know, no one else has managed in N-gauge. In our opinion, it is the smallest factory-built steam locomotive with sound. Even the hand sample sounds convincing. There is a classic GMP to match the locomotive as it would have been on the road around 1958. The next locomotive will have considerably more horsepower. A completely new design is Class 110.3. Its nickname is Bügelfalte, pan squeeze. It completes the series of standard electric locomotives. We already have all the others with the die-cast zinc bodies, and this one was still missing, so we've now made a new one too. The Strom container has also found a home at DBAG. A variant is now appearing. Yes, we overhauled the 250 series last year. Metal-impregnated plastic, all the add-on parts, railguards and so on. And of course, it's not that far from the 250 series to the 155 series. We've never had a 155 with single-spar pantograph. It was therefore very obvious to make the first freight locomotives with pantographs that can be raised and lowered digitally. The hand sample gives a first impression. It looks good, doesn't it? Especially here in southern Germany with the Murg valleys, where the BDUU-type passenger coach played a major role at DBAG and still does at SVG, because SVG now operates the Leisure Express trains on two routes on behalf of the state of Baden-Württemberg. One via Ulm to Lake Constance to Singen, and one via the Gäubahn to Singen. And for this we have a new design in the carriage area. Many people might think that these already existed as mail coaches, but no, this design did not yet exist in N-gauge. The nice thing is that SVG has now turned this ex-federal mail wagon into a bicycle transport wagon. And accordingly, you need a lot of space for many bicycles, because the main focus is on being able to take the bikes with you. This is possible on the trips to Lake Constance with the beautiful SVG trains, for which there will also be the matching 218 of the NESA. These models can be used to create an authentic push-pull train. The cars can be retrofitted with interior lighting. The Class 232 locomotive is rolling into the Minitrix hobby program. It has LED lighting and the typical locomotive sound of a Ludmilla. Those who like Switzerland will enjoy the Golden Pass Line express train, which was operated by BLS. A varied program indeed. The 103-113 impresses with its richness of detail and a housing made of metal-impregnated plastic. Inside, a motor with a bell-shaped armature goes about its work. The prototype is still operational, and anniversaries are also celebrated in Z or Z gauge. One is a very round one, 100 years. There's no getting around it, even in Z gauge. There's no getting around it. The 01 is 100 years old. We're making the anniversary by making the 01 in a version we've never made before, namely with Wagner wind deflectors. We haven't done that before. Now we are doing it. The second anniversary, not far from Göppingen, the Geislinger Steige, 175 years. That also calls for a model. That also calls for a model, and we are very happy to respond to this cry, perhaps also from the market, and make a 194 with a Silberling, a silver coin, behind it. There are pictures. They were actually driven like this on the track, and we are honoring that. There will also be a small booklet describing the history of the Geislinger Steige. I think we have a nice product for our customers to mark the anniversary. Bronze edition, always a topic for the collector's passion. What's new? There will be a Württemberg platform car. The first passenger coach we make for this edition. We simply continue the series. And there's another important novelty, a completely redesigned shunting electric locomotive, the E60. There were 14 of them in the prototype. 3 are still in existence. One in Darmstadt-Kranichstein, one in the museum in Sinsheim, which has a somewhat more striking color scheme. And there's another one in the DB Museum in Koblenz-Lützel. I think it will be a nice model. Chassis made of metal, body made of plastic. Light changes. We have interior fittings and interior lighting in the driver's cab. I think it can also be used as a mainline locomotive in common Z or Z operation.
Das kann man dann im gemeinen Z-Betrieb auch als Streckerlok verwenden.
The ICE Experimental, shown here as a 4-car set on a test run in 1987, is now coming to the Z program in a 5-car version. A motor with a bell-shaped armature is installed in both power cars. And last but not least, the 0310, with a high-performance new design boiler, completes the Z or Z gauge novelty program, a truly noble racer. The fine rods are just as pleasing as the valve gear. The locomotive frame and body are made of metal. There will be an important new item in Gauge 1.
Der rote Pfeil.
The red arrow, completely made of die-cast zinc with many dainty and separately applied parts. The pantograph can be raised and lowered, digitally of course. The interior is, one could say, like our glass train, the ET491, which we had years ago in Gauge 1. It makes you want to shrink down, get in and drive through the Swiss mountains in model scale. The interior is highly detailed. The driver's cabs are reproduced, even the underbody of the railcar with all the pipes, tanks, and even the train protection system, the Signum Integra, is reproduced. There is nothing left to be desired in the Royal Gauge. This dreamlike landscape and a special machine maker's rave.
Da denke ich an das High-End-Modell für das aktuelle Jahr. Das wird eine Shay.
I'm thinking of the high-end model for the current year. This will be a Shay, a geared locomotive, as they say. The rotary motion generated by a slider crank gearbox is transmitted via cardan shafts to another gearbox and then to the machine's driving wheel sets. This keeps it going. It can be said that this locomotive has a history at LGB. It was already available in 1996 in small numbers, but at that time you could not experience the locomotive as you can today. For example, you couldn't smell it or hear it, but we can this time. And yes, the locomotive is highly detailed. It's basically like the other high-end metal locomotives we've been launching every year since 2018. We are playing the locomotive in 3 variants. There will be a current museum locomotive and one in Era 2 condition.
3 Varianten, eine aktuelle Museumslok ist dabei und eine im Zustand der Epoche 2.
The latter is created taking into account the small differences in design. There is also a suitable timber transporter. The log is secured by chains, forest railway atmosphere at its best in perfect quality.
Wir bleiben bei der Dampflok, da gibt es eine Dampflok.
Let's stay with the steam locomotives. There is a 4K that has a history that is not really positive.
Nee, nicht unbedingt, daher auch ihr
Not necessarily, hence its nickname, which is a bit macabre. The Reichsbahn's Death 4K, the 99-1561-2. Railroad enthusiasts always spoke of the death list of the 61. This locomotive always had the misfortune of running the last train on various narrow-gauge railroads in Saxony. For example, on the line from Wilkau-Haslau to Karlsfeld. The section Wilkau-Haslau-Kirchberg was discontinued on June 2, 1973. That was the last train it ran. And then on the legendary Route 422 on September 30th, 1984, the last passenger train. To solve the riddle, KBS 422 is the legendary Wolkenstein-Jöstadt line of the Pressnitztalbahn. From the beautiful Pressnitztalbahn to the Rhaetian Railway, where the GE 24222 is still operational even today. The RGB model represents the quaint locomotive perfectly. The model of the VT 137 is set in Era 3. As with the GE 24222, a buffer capacitor is installed to bridge short sections without power.